Hey everybody, welcome to the show. We did it. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm living the dream. Living the
Aren't
dream.
we all?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a jam-packed show today. We're at a new time. How does 6 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern Mondays work for you? This seemed to work pretty okay.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, so the problem with Sundays is that it was like I had to stay. We had to, stay moderately, sober to do the show that late and be cohesive. So it's nice to be able to relax a little bit on a Monday night and kick back a little bit. So we have a few guests waiting in the wings. We're going to talk about Men in Black Alien Attack. It is their 20th anniversary. So why don't we? Would you mind setting it up? I mean, you worked on this attraction. Like, what can you set it up for a few minutes, and then we'll bring everybody on for a little chat?
Well, 21 years ago, I was so young and thin, and we all were. Especially you. You were like a child.
Yeah.
No, I was brought on by Dave Cobb pretty late in the process after they realized that they couldn't afford the Danny Elfman music. And I was brought on because I had video game and theme park experience to some degree, working at Walt Disney Imagineering for a little while, just a few years before. And as a student of theme park music and working on, some projects here and there, but nothing on my own. But so yeah, they brought me on and I scored the pre-shows first, I think, if I remember. And then I did the music for the ride and then the music for the safety video, the Doofus and Do-Right video. We did that a little bit later. But yeah, they hired this 25-year-old kid
Yeah.
for an $80 million attraction.
Now look at you.
Right.
Doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it definitely started my whole career in theme parks.
So, I mean, you just mentioned the name. Let's bring him on. The world famous Dave Cobb.
Hey, y'all.
I need an audio track that can just go, woo!
Yeah, you need a soundboard. You need one of those soundboard things. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, Dave. It's great to see you.
Good to see you.
So, here's the fun thing is that you did a very extensive, an hour and a half Alien Attack live stream.
No, thanks to you. I mean, thanks to you. Jesus, you did all the fancy button pushing.
Oh, it's actually really, it's a lot more fun for me to be behind the scenes pulling the strings than to be having to do it all at the same time. So
sure.
it was, and actually I have a guy for that today. Brian, everybody here. This
Brian.
is everybody. He's in the back behind the screen. So I'd like to try not to repeat everything that was already said because we have a whole year of content, right?
Sure. I could have talked another hour for that. I mean, and I got stuff teed up. I got at least an hour or two video and short segments of like mock-ups and stuff that I'm going to roll out. It's just, it's 20 years is a long time, but it's also like I've had this box of videotapes sitting on the side of my desk and underneath it for 2 decades. Be like, oh, I should cut that stuff together. I should get to that. And you never find the time. And now it's like, well, I got the time.
Yeah.
And it happens to coincide with the 20th anniversary. So yeah, I mean, there's so many great stories to tell.
So I would love to hear, what was the assignment and the requirements that led to this attraction to be built?
Well, the first thing to know is it was started very quickly. So we're talking like Men in Black, the movie came out summer of '97. And I was contacted by Phil Hedema about the gig when I was working at Landmark at the time in like November of '97. I went out to lunch with him. And what he explained was that they had Islands of Adventure coming. It was going to open in '99, summer '99. And so it was full steam ahead, right? They were a little over about 2 years, year and a half from opening. And the business analysts were like, wait a minute, we got a major theme park opening and we don't have anything planned for a year afterwards for the studio park. And they were worried about sort of, leeching off their own attendance. And so they realized they needed to fast track an e-ticket like that. And so that plot of land had been looked at, and we talked about this on the live stream, that it had been looked at for Jurassic Park originally before it got its own land, and a couple of other attractions. But it was basically like, we need an e-ticket, and it needs to open in spring. Basically, originally they wanted to open Christmas, by the way.
No, yeah, they always do.
It's just not going to happen. And so we had, from the time I was hired to opening day, is like 23 months, and
wow.
So that's insanity. I mean, to build a whole attraction from scratch was really ambitious. So what started it was really, like, I won't say desperation, but it was certainly like, oh crap! From a strategic standpoint, the park needed another family-friendly e-ticket that they could market. And what I was told when I was hired is that as soon as Men in Black opened, like, I don't know if you knew this, but it played in theaters for like 6 or 8 months. Like it had a really long run, and this is back when movies could play that long. But they knew it was popular, and they had their eyes on it, so they had already started some tentative discussions with Sony. But by the time I hired, the deal was done. So it was those two things, really.
So I have one more question before I want to kind of have Andy come in and all that kind of good stuff. So your treatment and screenplay for that attraction was online, and I've read it, and I love it. I look at it all the time. It's really cool. I don't know if you share that nowadays or not, but it was really awesome that you did. So I do have a question for you about that, which is how many versions of it, full-blown different versions, did you go through while working on it, and who were you kind of working with on it? Who are you collaborating with? Well,
so these things start out as treatments before they're scripts. They start out as treatments and treatments. And if you include those, I would probably say there was maybe 15 or 20 drafts. And that's everything. That's soup to nuts, from beatments to, okay, then we have treatments for, here's the elevator show, and here's the pre-show, and here's the loading video, and and here's the main ride. Each of those had their own treatments, and then each one of those gets a script. I would say all told, all of that is probably about 15 or 20 versions. And I was working on that with a couple of people. So Craig Hanna, who is still my boss to this day, I think, he was one of the heads of Universal Creative at the time. And so I was, Phil was my big boss, but Craig did the initial blue sky on this attraction, and then sort of tossed me the football to run with it. So I would work with him and check in with him on the script. I also had two screenwriter friends of mine here in LA, Sean Abley and Tracy Berna, who were both comedy writers, help me out. And so, because I knew I had a lot of writing to do. And so they helped with the pre-shows, they helped with sort of joke punch up, And then the big thing about the script was, once you get somebody like Will Smith involved, right, he is a comedy powerhouse. And so all the stuff we wrote for him was a framework at best, and we knew that. Like, we tried to write very funny stuff, but nothing that's in the attraction today was what we put on paper, not because of his ego, but because he came to it and said, he literally asked, he's like, can I bring my comedy writer with me and work on this material? And we're like, yes. Yeah. We were hoping you would do that. And so, if you include that, it's probably 20 or 30 drafts, because he did a couple of passes before he showed up for the day, because we only had him for a day to shoot. And then on the set, his guy was off camera, shouting ideas to him and cracking him up. And so a lot of the stuff that, my favorite one of all, somebody asked me what was my favorite of the endings, because I think we're trying to figure out the other day, there's 36, because it's high, medium, low score, comparing two vehicles, and compare and contrast. I think that comes up to 36. I'm a terrible mathematician. But my favorite one, he's like, y'all were like, yeah. And y'all over here were like, oh, they shooting. I think we barely got a clean take of that, because we're all cracking up on set, because we didn't see it coming. And that's the best stuff in that ride, is all Will Smith bringing his mojo, which is a blessing in an experience like that.
Yeah, at the peak of his powers.
Oh yeah, height of his powers.
Yeah. So bring in Andy. So you went from Will Smith to Andy. How did that go? What's this? I'd love to hear the story. I'd love to, Andy. How did you guys? You met somehow? What was working together? This was your first big break. I think there's a lot to talk about here. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Andy. Though you lived it.
I did live it. Like I said before, we were also young and thin. And But yeah, I had met Dave some years earlier through some architecture stuff that I was working on for a professor. And Dave was working. Were you a show writer by then, or were you still an intern?
I was a show writer and sort of fledgling creative director at Landmark. Yeah.
But we met at Landmark, and I was getting photos for a book and things like that. And then we just became friends and started hanging out. And then 5 years later or so, 4 or 5 years later, when they realized that they couldn't afford the Danny Elfman music, and they were rapidly running out of money anyway, that they needed somebody good and cheap, and that was my specialty at the time.
Andy, you got to help me. Yeah.
Yeah. I still remember how much I got paid too. I don't know if I can reveal that.
There's not a lot at all.
Yeah, you know what though? With the evolution of the industry and how many just the sheer like volume of composers there are now, and how much easier it is to produce music, you know, that number wouldn't be too shocking today.
Yeah, right.
You know, for just the attraction or just the pre-show videos, but you know, it was 5 figures, low 5 figures.
Yeah. And you know, I think one of the neatest things about it was how much of it, I mean, you know, a lot of people think, oh, there's orchestra in there, and it's like, that's all samples. That entire thing is all samples.
I was on the Unofficial Universal podcast earlier today, and we were talking about that. I mean, it was not only was it weird to talk about the attraction again so much, but they wanted to get really granular, and I was talking about some of the equipment I used, and like I remarked how like, wow, like for 1999 sample technology, it sounds pretty good.
It does. It's miraculous. I still listen to it now and go, damn, you were manipulating some. I mean, again, I've, you know, both of us have gotten to work recently, like on the Warner Brothers project with, you know, the Seattle Symphony Orchestra and 80 pieces and electronic samples and things. And there's still parts of Men in Black where I'm like, that is a really, really, really good fake out, right? Like it hits the right spots, you know.
Well, I mean, I think it was the Peter Seidlacek strings that I was using, and some of the orchestra, the trombones, or with the staccato trombones that we use for that bop 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 bop,
right,
still sound great.
Well, and the thing is, a lot of people will assume if it's. I've actually had people ask me this, like, oh, well, if it's electronic, it's, you know, it must be easier. And it's like, no, getting something that polished and big sounding requires not just mixing and you know and effects and things, but understanding the limitations of samples. And yeah. I think that's something you know really, really brilliantly, is that you know exactly what those samples can do and can sound like, and well, you push them to their edge, you know.
Yeah, I had just come off of doing a couple of animated shows for Saban and Fox Kids, Fox Family, and like, you know, I really had to maximize the potential of everything that I had. Judd.
Judd.
I mean, sure.
I mean, where's the line?
Yeah. But yeah, I had just come off of doing some really low budget TV animation shows, and like, you know, I had really fast turnarounds, and they had a really high standard of quality. So I really, it was a real trial by fire, and like it really primed me for, you know, doing a bigger projects like this, you know, a really truly cinematic kind of project.
Yeah. What was it? I remember you sent me something. Was it? I know you sent me your Goosebumps game as a sample. But I remember there was something called Flying Over something that was from a game.
It was the Flying Over London. That was for a World War I biplane fighting game for the PS2, I think.
Yeah, I remember you sending me that as a sample, and I remember playing it in the car going to lunch with Phil at full volume on the car stereo, and he was like, "These are samples?" And I'm like, "Yep, this is the guy we want to use." So that I think that demo is what sold him on it, at least. But I remember playing that for a lot of people, going, "This is the guy." So.
It's funny. I recently listened to that piece again a few months ago, and I was just like, "Wow, okay."
It's a really great piece. That, and you know, the other one I always tell people, like, remember the fantasy Disneyland 50th theme that you came up with?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
That's still one of my favorite things ever.
Hey, fan nerds out there, you need to find this because it never got used for anything. But oh my God, I loved it so much.
It's on my website. It's on Pachinko Media.
Oh, good. Seek it out. It's great.
So, Patrick, you're muted. There you go.
Hi. That takes me back to earlier today on every conference call I was on. You're muted. So we have Jason in the wings. Andy, would you mind giving a nice introduction to Jason?
Absolutely. Jason DP is a good friend of mine. Hi, Jason.
Hey, how's it going?
Jason was a day one pre-opening operations cast member, team member, who you ended up writing some manuals for the ride or something, if I remember.
Yes.
And what's funny is that Jason and I, we've been friends now for about 10 years. And he didn't, realize that, like how funny it is that, you sat and listened to or stood and listened to that music for 3 years.
Yeah.
Not knowing that years and years later we'd be friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Same thing here. Like I met Jason, I guess, through either On Track Themes or through Larry Wyatt or something, right? Or Ty.
Ty.
Yeah. Before that,
as a show writer, and he sort of let me know that, oh yeah, and I worked on Men in Black Year One. So we were there at the same time, but we didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
But the moment where I kind of knew who you were was when you said, oh yeah, and I wrote the manual. I'm like, wait, what? Because we got to limit the manual. Like Universal Creative doesn't really do the ops manual. That's operations duty. But they sent it my way with a note saying, we think you'll enjoy this. And I read it, and it's literally like it's written by Zed. Like it's literally, it's an in-universe operations manual, which doesn't happen a lot. And so I was so tickled by it. It was so great.
So that's thank you. That was the theming manual. Later in my Universal career, I ended up writing a lot of the training manuals that went on. But my passion was always working on the theming manuals themselves and how the operators can add to the story that was already put in by you guys early on. So that theming manual, I just tried my best to kind of.
It's funny. One of my first jobs when I was at Universal was on Back to the Future Hollywood, was installing that, and I was a lowly coordinator, and I was tasked with writing the ops manual, and I wrote it as if I did exactly what you did. I'm like, well, it's from Doc, right? Doc Brown's got to write this. So I don't know if they still use that one to this day. It's probably been changing up. Well, it's obviously changed now, but I did a bunch of writing for that back then. So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where even down to ops employees, and I know the fans know this, but the wider park audience, like, what makes the Haunted Mansion memorable for me beyond it's the Haunted Mansion? It's when the host does the spiel and gives you the dark look and says, "Bid, please drag your bodies into the dead center." Like when the ops employees liked working there so much because of the care of the attraction, it's really a win-win. And so I love that happened in MIB. We didn't plan it. Like, we didn't edict it. We didn't want it. We didn't train everybody to be that. But the fact that everybody sort of falls in line and wants to be an agent makes my heart sing. It's great.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things was working in pre-show. I had this whole thing where I had a lab coat and kind of Jerry Lewis Nutty Professor glasses. And I would talk like this. Okay, everybody, we're gonna welcome to the universe and you. Welcome. Come on in. And went through the whole spiel. And during the start of it, I went back through the curtain. I changed out into my MIB jacket and my glasses. And by the time the tape winds down and the elevator doors open, I burst out of the curtain. All business. Everybody in the elevator. You're
that's
MIB trainees now.
Oh, that's great. I'm not wearing. That's amazing. Let me ask.
Oh, sorry. One more thing. I just want to. Sorry, Dave. I just lost my train of thought. One of my biggest delights is seeing recent videos where I see that the current team members are now doing that as well.
That's fantastic.
They kept that tradition going all these years.
That's amazing. How like, were guests really fooled? Did they think they were going to go through the archway that said University? Did they think that was real?
Some of them figured it out, especially rewriters.
Right, of course.
So they would just stand there like, this is where I'm going.
Yeah, right.
But the fun part was to kind of guide everybody's attention to the curtains. Like I would get everybody to stand, but look at the curtains, look over here. Pay no attention to the moving wall behind the curtain.
I just remember like going through all the old Epcot attractions in my head going, how do I create? Actually, the one that probably had the most effect on it was, I think, probably the Living Seas. And it rained and rained and rained. The deluge, right? Like, that was so ponderous, but I imprinted on it as a kid. So I remember playing that back in my head, like, since the beginning of recorded time, like, basically. And that was the inspiration for that, was how do I make it sound so, like, optimistic but ponderous? You know?
Yeah.
And I love it, you know, it just I talked about in the other show today I did we talked about the Marathon of Mayhem and how Universal is kind of the anti-Disney in a lot of ways, and how Men in Black sort of, like, you know, almost started that tradition a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, you know, they used to poke fun at Disney a little bit. They had the I think there was a pair of bitten mouse ears in the Jaws attraction, like floating in the water way back when. And there were underhanded ones. And everybody now, they've got, you know, the Shrek posters that are all, but we were first. Like, our posters that Ray did were amazing, right? And I actually saw fan art the other day where somebody had redrawn the "Are We Alone? Of Course We Are" with the son and the father standing there. They redrew that whole thing. It's on Redbubble or something. You can buy it on a T-shirt, and it blows my mind. It makes me so happy that people latch onto that, because when we landed on that as a bookend, that it was going to be this attraction, we're like, what are they going to tell you when they neuralize you? That's important, right? In Men in Black lore, in the movies, the story they make up after they zap you is just as important as the fact that you're being zapped. And so, yes, we wanted to send you back into remind you of the thing that you were at the beginning, and it's a bookend for people who don't understand, who maybe don't know neuralization or the ins and outs of the movie. But the tone of the script that's up there where it says, "Are we alone? Of course we are." Like, we wanted it to be sort of optimistic in its nihilism, if that makes sense. Like, you know, it's like, don't worry about aliens, you know. And that kind of snark was not something you wouldn't really see that. You didn't see a lot of it at Disney. I mean, I remember the first time I was ever in a Disney attraction thinking, oh, their sense of humor is getting more modern. And that was Statler and Waldorf at the end of Muppets 4D, when he says, if you have time to go to the bathroom before the next show, we can't, you old fool, we're bolted to the seats. Like, when has a Disney attraction been postmodern and referenced itself? Never before that, you know?
So I have a question for, it might be Dave, actually, primarily, most likely Dave. I've always thought that your attraction was like one of the most cohesive theme park experiences, from the time you're out into the area, leading to the trend, you know, the whole Epcot World's Fair farce that leads you downstairs to the multiple pre-show staged elements. And then, like you were even talking about, bringing you out of that and ending the ride as if you had just got off a World's Fair experience. That, I don't think that's ever been done in a theme park. And I feel like just the amount of hurdles it may have been to try to tell people that this is actually going to make sense. Like, what was that like? Like, it's pretty out there. It's very referential and, like, very clever. You know, like, how did that go down?
Well, thank you for that. I mean, a lot of that is the passion of the team and everybody involved, and the passion of guys like Phil and Craig, who were very story oriented. But also, it's just luck. Like, you create some of these things, like the fact that it's in the World's Fair, and the fact that there's these 60s references. Like, that's, you and I know that intrinsic to the movie. But not everybody that walks into that park is going to have that kind of breadth of knowledge of design and aesthetic and story. And so some of it is just, you're just hoping, you know, you hope that they get it. And I forget where I heard this before, but I think it's a truism for attractions and movies and things, in that in creating something, you have to be faithful to the faithful. And that putting your trust in the people that really know it is a fine line between that and making it accessible to somebody who doesn't know it. But it's that classic engagement pyramid of waiter, swimmer, diver, right? And there's going to be 90% of your audience is just touch the toe. They probably see Men in Black maybe once, Then there's people who've seen it a half dozen times. Then there's the super fans who know the whole thing. You have to sort of appeal to all of them. And so that cohesiveness and self-contained world of the attraction was, by design, in order to check all the boxes for all of that audience, right? Like I explained this on the live stream, that somebody asked about the towers, that they had never seen that the third one was broken off, right? After 20 years of the attraction, they didn't realize that the third one was gone, and we're like, okay, well, here, you know why instinctively now that I've told you, because it disappears in the movie because it was a spaceship, and there were 3 in the real tower. But we actually talked this through, that one of the great things about doing it the way we did was, even if you don't know that the World's Fair has 3 towers, you remember 2 towers from the movie. Mm-hmm. Even if you're not a huge fan, even if you don't remember that Edgar gets in one and it breaks off, you remember that image in the mural in the immigration room of looking up at the 2 towers. So it works in a meta way. It works for non-fans. When you walk up in the direction, oh, right, it's those. But if you are a fan, you go, oh, that's missing. Ah, there's a third one. Oh, that's the one Edgar used. Like, we have those discussions. That's like, I try to tell people, these are the kind of conversations we have for these things, and we get paid for it, which is fun. Yeah, but it's not just about serving fan service. It partially is that. You need to be faithful to those fans. But you know what? You already have them. You're already hooked them. Mm-hmm. You need to give them enough to feel like they're in the know, but you also need to put it enough that you are inviting people into that world in a way that does not depend on their knowledge of the money. And so everything you're talking about in that bookend was in order to serve both of those masters. That's great.
Well, we have a viewer answer here from Randy from YouTube. Are the worms in the queue line break room on the way to the loading platforms replicas or real models from the movie? Always wanted to know.
Those are completely bespoke for the ride. They were made by Advanced Animations in Vermont. They were not based even on, when you make these things for a movie, they are, used for a couple of hours with touch-ups in between takes. Robotics for a movie and animatronics for a film like that are impossible to use in an attraction because they're just not built for that kind of cycle time. We did not have access to the original molds or anything from the movie because none of that really exists. We actually reached out to what's his name, Rick, famous makeup guy who did the movie, the features. Rick
Baker.
Rick Baker, thank you. We actually reached out. And he's like, "Yeah, I got nothing," So all of that was hand sculpted in clay and molded especially for the attraction. The fun fact: the voice of the alien of the worm that's talking is the same actor who does Spider-Man and Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man Next Door. He was a local Orlando guy who did a lot of animation, and he did like 3 voices in Spider-Man, and he was a favorite of Sound Deluxe, who was in Orlando, who did all the recording for us. And so he does the worm in the break room and the one in the shadow. But the one that's next to him, that's just going, who doesn't talk, that's me. And the reason he doesn't talk is it was a value engineering. Like we had 2 identical heads, and both of them could talk, and we had to cut some money, so we cut the mouth out of one of them, and so one of them just.
Got it. That's great. Cool. And do you have a question for? I know you know Dave and all that, but do you have any questions for the show that you want to ask, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've talked about many times is the problems with the acoustics. I mean, since this is kind of a designy show, the acoustics of that warehouse show building were a nightmare for audio. At any stage, was there a plan to enclose the scenes or have higher walls or acoustical treatments, between the show scenes at all, or doors even? or were the doors cut?
I don't recall. I think the discussion was because of if I remember correctly, it's that structural acoustic walls that are part of the architecture are possible, and it wasn't a budget decision, it was a time decision. Is that we didn't have a locked track, we didn't have locked target placements. So much of it was happening so fast that we could not plan out structural that went all the way up to the ceiling without extra time. And so it was really like, we got to build a box, and it's got to be flexible enough for us because of how fast we're going. We will deal with acoustics later. So there are acoustic materials up there, and there were material choices made in the facades and even buffering behind the facades and inside the windows to assist with that. But at the end of the day, it became hanging curtains between some sets and hoping for the best. But a lot of that, and again, they knew that would be an issue because they had the very similar issue Cat had, and it did not boil down to anything other than we need more flexibility in the schedule in order to get everything done. So let's leave it.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize it was a matter of time and not money. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't.
Probably would have turned into money eventually. Like if we had done it, it probably would have rolled out.
Right.
Oh, great.
That's always the first thing to get cut is any kind of acoustics treatment. It's like, oh, we don't need that. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then you get on site and you try to mix it. I mean, it's funny. I wasn't mixing on site attractions at that point yet. But having mixed a bunch of rides similar to that now, it's just like, man, there's really two ways to mix a ride like that. It's either very quiet and detailed, or just blast it, and you got to just pick one. There's almost no in between.
Yeah. It's. I mean, it's and again, it was also like it was fairly early in Universal's sort of theme park history, right? It's not. There were a lot of great talent there, but that institutional knowledge took a long time to settle in. And so now they audio something. It's not that they didn't treat it, with respect when we did it. It was really more scheduled, like I said. Like working Back to the Future, I got a huge education about audio on that one because those domes were like sonically perfect, and a dome environment that's kind of impossible because of the way sound bounces around. So that the engineering to make that work was an education.
Well, with the speakers behind the dome, the way that they were like angled and aimed in that spherical position were pretty much ideal for directional sound too. So that that's why no matter which position you were in, it sounded fantastic.
Yeah. It's an art form and a science, and sometimes you have time for both. Other times you don't.
Yeah.
So we have a question here from Facebook, and I figured all three of you guys could answer. My favorite alien is a taxi cab alien. He virtually vanishes under the hood. Andy, Dave, and I'll add Jason in. Do you have a favorite alien effect?
Hi, Tim.
Yeah, hi, Tim. Yeah, I do actually. I have. There's one that was so involved in terms of its design, but it goes by so fast that I'm not sure people quite appreciate it. And that is when Zed says it's getting a little hairy out here. Let's split up, and the vehicle split up. One in an alleyway, one inside the fish market. If you pay attention, and I'm sure the fans know this, but a lot of guests miss it. You hear an alien going, "Please, please, I'm unarmed." And then he goes, and he unfolds and he's got guns. Well, that took forever to figure out how do we have something that when it's in its down position has a face on it that looks cute and unassuming and looks like it has its hands up. So, and that was, again, that was a Neville Page solution. We had a concept for, we need an alien that looks tiny and cute and bug-like who says, please, please don't shoot. And then goes 6 against 1, huh? And that's when all the trash cans open and you get ambushed. That ambush alien took forever to figure out. And I love it. It's my favorite gag in the ride, but I think it's so subtle that it goes over most people's heads.
That's great because it calls back to the animal kingdom with insects that do that have a false face somewhere, and I love that. I'm like,
that's exactly what Neville did. Neville brought us bugs that had camouflage. You're exactly right. He actually brought research images for, hey, look what bugs do when they want to catch something. And they're like,
yeah,
could do that.
It's amazing.
I love just the big eyeball in the window.
Yeah.
From the sort of tentacle alien or whatever it is.
Yeah, with the two arms out overhead.
Just like
some kind of Lovecraftian horror.
Yeah.
And there's a thing where the engineering of that is out over the ride track, right? And most fans don't think of that, but the minute you have anything, it's called overhead safety. The minute you have anything that could possibly fall onto guests, like the engineering for that one piece is way, way, way more involved than the engineering on the one on the right, which is safely off the track, right? And it's a way more complicated piece of engineering for that piece than you'd think, even though it's just a very simple move.
Jason, what was your favorite?
My favorite alien? My favorite alien was the one near the end, just before the Will Smith screen. I can't remember the actual name. I want to call him the pawn shop alien. He's kind of table out on the street, and he's selling stuff, and he complains when he gets hit. Like, hey, stop shooting! Stop! What are you doing? Hey, stop!
Yeah, he's over by the hot dog cart on the left-hand side, right?
That's right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So, funny story.
Mm-hmm.
He was originally supposed to be at the crash. If you look at his suit, his spacesuit looks like the spaceship. And he was supposed to be the pilot of that ship. He was for a story moment that was like, he was basically yelling to all the aliens that were escaping, hit the streets, it's the MIB. He was like, he was supposed to be like the inciting incident. Right?
Scram, everyone.
Yeah, and spray, right. And he was going to be a target, but that's why he's got so much movement, is because he needs to emote, and then he's got to react when he gets hit. Well, he wouldn't fit. We tried to, where they had designed him for, again, speed of production, speed of design, we just got him in place, and there was no way for it to put him safely out of the motion envelope. And again, we talked about this on the live stream. The motion envelope of a vehicle is somebody in the 98th percentile male, fully stretched out, leaning on one butt cheek, and then spin the vehicle. Well, if you do that, the actual size of the motion envelope for that vehicle is enormous. And so there was nowhere to put him other than up. And so we would have to do this unnatural pile of rubble for him to be up high enough out of view, or out of arm's reach. And then you couldn't see him, and he wasn't looking at an eye to eye because he wasn't posed to look down at you. There was all these problems. And so we ended up scrapping the idea and be like, how do we got room for this guy? Let's put him in Times Square. And so we just wrote new dialogue for him and programmed it differently. And and no one's the wiser, but those are the kind of decisions you have to make, you know?
It's almost as if he just ran really far after the crash.
I like that. I like that idea. Right. That he ran his crap. Yeah. The other reason, there was also a story reason for it, because the more we looked at it, having that moment of, A, are they going to know he's the pilot? B, does anybody need to tell the aliens to run away and hide? It was kind of a group decision, like, yeah, we don't necessarily need him here. It's not a big deal that he can't fit. Let's find a better place for him. And we've decided, let's put him in a place where you have a long way to look at him and see his beautiful movements and see him shot. That was another one done by Advanced Animation. So two different companies did the animatronics, Advanced Animations out of Vermont and Attraction Services here in Valencia. And Advanced did the ones that are usually the more complicated movements. They did Bubba and Bob in the immigration room. They did the worms. They did that pilot guy.
It's great work.
We got a question from Mr. David Alter. That's got to be a fake name. Similar prop question to the worm guys. Were the weapons on display in the last Q scene before you head to the load platform also bespoke a replica mold from the movie?
Nothing was available from the film. Film production companies don't keep that shit. They don't know it's going to be a hit. They don't know they're going to do sequels. So most of that stuff gets shelved or thrown out or rots because it's made to look good on camera. It's not made to last. And so none of it. So a lot of them are actually the game guns, right? We just made more of those and put them in. A bunch of them, believe it or not, are toys. We just found toys and did what any good prop maker would do, is You put greeblies on it. That's a technical term. Look it up. Greeblies are the things that you put on props to make them look more detailed. And then spray painted them all and made them all super shiny silver. Like it's all made from scratch. Everything in that pre-show is made from scratch. Nothing in the ride comes from the movie. None of the aliens. Like I read an article on some fan site that talks about how it's 126 animated figures and 30 of those are from the movie. Nope. Nothing is from the movie other than the Wormy guys, which we sculpted, and Eek and Bob in the again, which we also made, and Frank the Pug, which we also made. So even those three were made by us. All the other designs are completely bespoke and made for this attraction.
That's great. So I have another super nerdy, well, in the weeds question, which was this. So were there any scenes, entire scenes or segments that were cut from maybe early drafts of the script that you were holding on to for dear life, and then someone had to tap on the shoulder and said, that's not going to happen, we can't afford it? Were there any big moments like that you look back and remember?
Not so much cut because we couldn't afford them, but altered for either to come up with a better version or to streamline, right? Like a good example is the pre-show. If I ever find it, I'll have to post it. There's a cut of the pre-show early on. And Andy knows this because Andy had to rescore it, or we had to sort of music edit, if I remember. The pre-show was much more scene with Zed, alien dossiers of all the prisoners, a couple of shots of Will, scene with Zed. But that ended up being tedious and boring, and no one was going to stand and watch that. And so Michael Caroni was our in-house editor at Universal, and he deserves a huge amount of credit for that pre-show, for cutting it with that snazzy back and forth between things. And yes, there's moments where we get dialogue across from Zed, but the scenes were originally a lot longer. And I, frankly, this is, again, a testament to a collaborative, creative effort. I really pushed for the script as is until I saw Michael's cut, and I went, you know what, it's better. It's way better. It's more fun. It's got energy. You can nibble at it when you're in the queue. You can hear bits and pieces. You don't have to have your attention on it all the time. So that's a big one. And then the other big change was after the ambush, when you're in Central Park and you see the park setting and you go into the tunnel. That tunnel, and I've talked about this on other interviews before, that tunnel was going to be to push the red button in. Because in the movie, remember, he hits the button, they go through the Lincoln Tunnel, the vehicles go upside down and go really fast. So originally it was going to be a super speed tunnel, if anybody remembers the old People Mover gag. And for a while in the 80s, it was through the World of Tron. But it was like we were going to do projections, and so that you hit the button and it's like you're going really fast. Until we realized we don't have the room. And again, this is a testament to, this is when you're working on a project this fast and you get the ride laid out and you finally look at the space you have. And it's like, there is no way to get adequate projection technology in this that is going to look good. It's just going to look like crap. And you're never going to feel like you're going fast in that vehicle because it doesn't go fast, right? So that was a panic punt, that scene. And that scene, and I forget where it came from, we knew we wanted somewhere in the ride, wouldn't it be fun if you shot at each other? But we never really had a reason for it. And then somebody said, hey, what if we scan? I don't, to this day, I don't know who said it. But somebody said, why don't we scan the vehicle somehow? And I went, oh, yes! And so projection screen could fit in between. That was very thin. We could fit that. And then we did the scanning bar. So that scene was not planned from the beginning. And then it became like, well, what do we do with the red button? Because you need to do something with the red button. It's got to be a big deal. And we said, well, perfect. And we put that at the very end. It's the thing that blows up the bug from the inside. And that's a big point scan. So those were organic changes that happened because of space limitations and time.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is that whole hallway projection effect. I feel like it's the bus. You're on the party bus. It's the supercharged. I forget the IP name, but
the Fast and Furious.
Fast and Furious. I forgot that the other day too. But you're in the hallway for the first segment, and I think it's a very effective effect in that ride in the first portion of it. I was like, this is really fun. Yeah, it is good, and that's the kind of gag we wanted. But it just the space of the space that we had, and the view shed of looking down into the next scene. Like there was no way to disguise that you were going. That the scenery ahead of you was really slow. We talked for a while about pointing the vehicles to the side,
and only have like the gag that they now do in Forbidden Journey with the flu powder, where you're looking at the screen, but the flu funnel is basically following you as you go. We talked about that for a while. Like, could we rush forward and have fans above you and strafe the wall and strafe the projection? And it just, the more we looked at it, the more we're like, you can look to the side and see that you're not moving. Like, there's no way to get a protected view shed. A lot of the gags that you can pull on a ride like Fast and Furious, or more importantly, like Spider-Man or Transformers, that people may not realize, the reason half of those gags work in that ride, the reason it feels like you're going fast and being flung through the air, is because your view shed is completely blocked. Like, those walls go up to here, you can't see the floor. Men in Black isn't that. You can see everything. And so those sort of decisions went out the window, and we had to come up with more clever ways to use those things.
That's cool. So I have a question for you. And actually, I can bring on a couple people for this one. This is from More Than Thrills. That's got to be a fake name. What is the best way to make yourself appealing to entertainment companies? I went to school for film, but I really want to be involved in theme park design in any capacity, really.
Jason, you want to take this one?
Let's do it.
I have some opinions, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's I want to say, just as a preface to it, that there are so many different ways to get into it. For me in particular, it was just writing all this theme stuff. I was working at Universal Orlando as an operator, working around the parks, and opened a couple of attractions, Men in Black included, Revenge of the Mummy. And eventually I needed someone who was working with, I think Mark Thomas with On Track Themes. Mark needed needed someone to come in and write, and I was there. Someone went, "Oh, I've got the perfect person who knows it, who can get you in there," and that started my whole course of. I eventually moved out to California, and now I'm a show writer and creative director for themed entertainment projects. And I never would have guessed when I was working at Universal that I would have been there. But I think it's one of those, just like a lot of factions of the entertainment industry. It's one of those, it's getting out there, making the connections, being passionate about what you want to do. And there's no right time that it will happen, but sometimes it just works out that way. The universe the universe and you kind of connects.
So thanks, Jason. So what I would say to this, John, More Than Thrill. So I'm always helping out with there's organizations that you need to get involved with. The first is the Themed Entertainment Association, the TEA. They have tons of programs. I'm not sure if you're recently out of school or not, but they have something called Next Gen, which is very big in Orlando and in Los Angeles. And also there's clubs around the country, really. And so that's a great organization to get with. Also IAPA. There's also something called Slice Creative Network, which is for freelancers, mostly in Orlando, but they're also expanding across the country. So those are great resources of how to get in. And it's about find me on LinkedIn. I'll gladly talk to you offline and talk to you and recommendations. I'm Patrick Kling. You can find me and I'll happily talk to you all day long. Andy, do you have any thoughts about how to get into the themed entertainment industry?
Well, I think the key word that he mentioned was design, and I wonder if he really understands what that means in terms of theme parks. I mean, I wonder, if he's just thinking, about, designing rides and, from a story perspective or, design perspective. Because if you want to come at it from a design perspective, I mean, you've got to be either an artist or an engineer or both. Mm-hmm. There's few people that I know. I mean, I think Jason McManus is one of them, who he is an exceptional artist and he's a writer, and he does both, equally well, and is rightfully a creative director now for the same company as Dave. Well, I guess he's not a creative director, he's an art director, but anyway, he fills the role of creative director a lot. And like you said, the organizations and stuff. I think, what I tell people, like you brought up IAPA, I think that just showing up and hanging out at the TEA booth at IAPA at certain times of the day, you will meet pretty much everyone you need to meet in the entire industry all at once.
Yeah.
You just hang out, talk to people, be the and I think another thing that's important too in the industry that is underrated is to be the kind of person that people want to have around.
Yeah, totally.
You know, because you know a lot of these projects go on for years and years, and it's like, you know, kind of like being in a relationship or even being married. You know, you're in close quarters and talking to these people and dealing with them, you know, day in and day out. And you know, you don't want to work with a bunch of assholes if you
Yeah,
can avoid
we have a strict no asshole policy where we work.
Yes.
Life's
Yeah.
too short. Life's too short. You have to be able to fit in with a lot of different personalities.
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing, you know, you can defend your ideas and you know, what have you, but at the end of the day, you know, it's a very collaborative medium. I like to say it's filmmaking with aerospace.
That's a really good analogy.
Yeah.
I think that something that Jason said that I think is really important was that, you know, he said he focused on being a writer. And I will answer Michael's question in the same way I answer it when we do our TEA Next Gen speed dating, when we meet new students that are studying this, because there are programs that feed into us. And to Andy's point, design means a lot of things. Are you an artist? Are you an illustrator? Are you a set designer? Are you an engineer? Are you a mechanical engineer? Are you an electrical engineer? There's so many different ways you can go, and our industry pulls from all of them. What I tell people is you need to have a solid elevator pitch for who you are and what your talent is, and it can't just be, I want to be a designer. It can't. You can't say, I want to be you. Like, I have people very flatteringly say, I want to be you, and I'm like, you can't, because there's only one me, and there's only one Andy, and there's only one Jason Pugh. And it's like that some of it is luck and timing. Jason and I both lucked out and got to be known as writers, and we lucked, and that is a path that we had to hitched our wagon to and held on as hard as we could. Yeah. But trust me, there's a lot of luck going on. But the other thing was I didn't sell myself as anything but a writer for a very long time. I'm like, I'm a writer. I'm going to focus on that. And I think it's important that in your elevator pitch for who you are in this industry to have a single skill set to start with. It's great if you're a fan. It's great if we love generalists. We love people who love all of it. You know, I know enough about ride systems and technology and video projection, all those things are dangerous, but I don't design it. So it's about being a generalist enough to be conversant and enthusiastic about all the disciplines. But if you don't get into that elevator pitch with a single skill set, you're done. No one's going to talk to you. And so, and a skill set you can back up and say you're really good at. Like, I'm studying CAD, but I'm really a writer. That doesn't cut it, right? And this is the downer. And I hate to leave it on a downer, but I'm going to say to everybody that wants to get into this industry, especially if you're going to get into something like writing or creative direction, but this applies to the whole industry, but especially those kind of positions. You are picking a career that is like skydiving onto the head of a pin, like no other design industry, because every other design industry has distribution channels, right? You design toys, there's a million places to sell them. You make movies, great. There's a lot of places you can sell it. You want to build a theme park? There's like a couple of places in the world where that happens, and it doesn't happen at the same frequency that other products get created. And so, yes, this is a great industry. We love it, and we're lucky to be in it. And I encourage everybody that loves it to really try hard to get into it. But man, it is timing and knowing who you. It's timing and knowing who you are is 99% of it.
I forget who it was. It was a motivational speaker. The last lecture. That guy, remember that?
Oh, Randy Pausch. Yeah.
Randy Pausch. He said it's actually easier to become an astronaut than an Imagineer.
It is. It is. It is. And so competition is stiff. And if all you can say is I love theme parks and I want to design them, next. Yeah. Show me who you are and show me what your core skill set is, and maybe we'll talk.
Make yourself indispensable.
Yeah. We have like did he give me on for like one more question, Dave? Maybe 2 minutes?
Yeah, I got a couple minutes.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to kind of talk to everybody about this. Like, I just opened a pretty big project, and it's your baby, and then it's open. And
Sorry.
then, what's that?
Kelly's so right in her comment. She said, I would also tell people to find someone who will tell you the truth about your elevator pitch and your portfolio. Absolutely. Like, I try to be the iron glove, the iron fist in the velvet glove. like, I got to tell you the truth. I'm going to do it nicely, but I'm going to tell you the truth. Anyway, sorry, Patrick.
Oh, no problem. No, that's good. Kelly's a rock star. Hey, Kelly, thanks for watching. I want to talk about opening day. So I don't know if any of you were there for opening day. I presume Jason hopefully was. But
I was.
There's like the moment you hand it over to operations, or the last day on the set, or on the field. Maybe when it's opening day. What was that feeling like? I'd love to hear how that was to see your baby come to life. Like, that's pretty amazing. So Dave, yeah, I know you have a few more minutes left. So
yeah, it's hard. That moment's both wonderful and terrible. It's great because you get to see people enjoying it, and it's a little wistful because it's like your kid going off to college. Like, they're going to be in the hands of somebody else now, and you need to let them go. Right? There's separation. But there's also there's a moment, and this goes on usually a couple of weeks or months when you're doing closeout, where all of a sudden the security guard that was there for all of construction is not there anymore and asks you for your badge and doesn't know who you are, and you realize that it isn't yours anymore. Right? Yeah. I can't walk into backstage at Men in Black 20 years later. Trust me, nobody knows who the fuck I am. And
you know who I am.
There is a moment that's very hard where you literally have to rip it out of your heart and go, this is not mine anymore. Like, I have fans ask me all the time, why is this broken or that broken? Or how come they don't do this anymore? I'm like,
yeah, I don't know.
It ain't mine.
Cool. Dave, thank you. I know you have to run off to a call, so thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you'll be back. We appreciate it. So thank you very much. We're going to continue on with the show to wrap things up a little bit.
See you guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks. Bye, Dave. So Jason, same question to you. What was your opening day experience?
Well, my opening day experience, I remember I was frozen at unload because, during the media day, it was just like, everybody just stay in your position until this whole thing is over. So I heard the booms from unload of the pyro going off. It was only later on, once I was able to catch the news and see what was happening out there. Let me see. But it was really a thrill in hindsight because I was there at unload. I got to see the reactions of everybody coming off the ride, which was a lot of fun. I didn't have an official neuralizer prop of my own, but I bought one from, I think I got it from eBay. It was a toy from Burger King. So I had this little neuralizer toy, and my shtick there on opening day was whenever guests would come off and they were laughing about how much fun it was, I would figure, well, Agent J's neuralizer flash at the end didn't stick, obviously, so I'll just get him again. I put on the shades, flashed him again, and my favorite moment of that day, by far, was eventually there's a car that comes around, and Will Smith and Rip Torn are in the back row of it, right next to each other, and Will's just going like, that was great, and I said, like, you're not going to remember it though. And I put on my shades, neuralized him, flashed him up, and he went, his trademark, I can't do it, but his trademark Will Smith, at me, and I just went, wow.
That's great. So when were you brought onto the project? So how you were opening to test and adjust crew, or
opening team? I was over at Back to the Future in late 1999, and I was at Greeter one day, and I was kind of dancing along to the BGM that was coming out from Back to the Future. Whenever the Enchantment Under the Sea dance kind of music played, I would kind of do a little George McFly kind of shuffle. And I was just having a really good time. There was no one else around. Beautiful morning. And the supervisor walked by and he said, "You look like you're having a lot of fun." And I said, Yeah. No complaints.
Yeah.
Beautiful day. Great music to listen to. And he said, "Would you like to work at Men in Black? I'm opening this over here," and he pointed to the construction walls. Adjacent. The two attractions are adjacent. And I went, yes.
Yeah, where do I sign?
So he got me onto the team. So I was part of the hard hat crew, like just going through, making sure everything was clean, learning about the attraction, working with the leadership team to figure out how this attraction actually operates, and the supervisors were able to create a training manual from that, an operating manual based on what was handed down to them.
So you literally got recruited.
I got recruited.
Yeah. Agent K showed up in the building. How functional was the attraction when you first got on?
First on the team, I can't quite remember for sure, but I'm pretty sure that they had not started cycling yet. Because I remember it being a big deal that, vehicles are moving. This is what they look like when they move. Oh my gosh. It's always this kind of guessing game. At least on the operator side.
I was walking the track. My visit there was the day before they started cycling.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, Jason,
walk the track a lot.
What was that, Jason?
We would walk the track a lot and kind of figure it out. But see, the first day the vehicles are moving, it's like they're moving, and that's how they look when they move. Amazing.
Well, hey, Jason, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was nice meeting you. I'm kind of surprised we never crossed paths, but I also am in Orlando, Florida. Thanks for sharing in our 20th anniversary extravaganza. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
What a nice guy. Thanks, Jason. And thanks, Dave Cobb, for joining us. So, folks, this is the Untitled Themed Entertainment Design Lockdown Show. We're planning to do this every week. I actually think Monday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 p.m. Orlando, or, I'd reverse that, 6/9 works pretty well for me. So we'll probably just keep doing it at this time. And next week, there's so much news that's kind of been piling up. This isn't a political show. This is really more about just kind of talking about what's going on. There's a lot of speculation about how the theme parks are going to reopen, whether that's June, whether that's July. It's hard to say. So we'll see how that goes. From Doug, this is on YouTube and it's on Facebook. We're not going to delete it or take it down. You'll be able to go as soon as we end this in about 5-10 minutes. You can go back and watch all that magic. All right. Don't worry. We're not going to leave you hanging. So we'll be back next Monday. We'll do some sort of topic between now and then. It's really fun having guests on. So I'm sure we'll bribe somebody to come on the show, share their insights, but thanks for joining us, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. I'm going to end the show.